Welcome to the Human Up Podcast. My name's Dave Marlon, your host, and it's a huge honor to have Grant Denton in studio today. Welcome, Grant.
Right here. Thanks for having me, David.
It's an honor. Now, Grant Denton is both a homeless and a recovery advocate. He happens to be in recovery himself. He's the founder of the Karma Box, which is a nonprofit in Reno, and he actively runs a homelessness program in Reno. Welcome, Grant.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right. Before we get going, could you tell us what's Karma Box?
So Karma Box originated as a grassroots community effort. I was working at a methadone clinic and I was taking the clients. We were going out and volunteering, and we started building these little library box type things, and we would paint it, build them up, paint them, stick them in front of stores, and we would fill it with non-perishable food hygiene items. This is in 2018 and August of 2018. And then from there, the community really grabbed onto it. We had one in Carson City, and then the community they did a story about it, and it just really ran with it. Folks we built a few, but after that, it was just a community driven thing. And now we have about 60 Karma Box. We got one out here in front.
Yeah, one in front of Vegas Stronger. Yeah. I love that. And to me, whenever I see extra food, I'm leaving for the day. I go and I drop it in the box, and it's pretty cool that the next day it's never there.
Yeah, well, and that's the gig, right? This is the one thing where if your box is empty, you're succeeding. It's grassroots community effort, reciprocal relationship, people giving to those in need, and it's small acts of kindness. And then in 2020, May of 2020, turned it into a nonprofit and started doing homeless outreach. And then from there, did a safe camp. And then from there, we did a workforce program. And then now we do reentry, sheltering, resource center, and all that up in Reno, Carson City, and Sparks.
That's a lot.
Yeah, a lot of work.
It's interesting to me because I'm still newish to the homelessness treatment space. I've been doing this for 8 years. There are a very small list of people who I consider the experts in this area, and you are one of those experts.
Well, and what makes you an expert, right? So, and if I'll go speaking places and in a room of professionals, and I'll be like, everybody, my name's Grant Denton. I'm the founder of the Karma Box Project, and I have my master's degree from University of Reno in homeless solutions. And people will clap, and I'll be like, I'm just joking. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. There's what makes a person an expert. There's not a single thing that'll show that you're an expert. And what makes you an expert is who's working in it and who's actually solving problems and how long have you been there. And how I got to where I was at was, starting at the methadone, working in the recovery field, then working at a shelter. And then from working at the shelter, I got an opportunity to work at the a business improvement district. So how does homelessness interact with community? And from there, that's where we get started with transitioning people from the streets out, which is, a lot of it takes recovery.
Yeah, it really does. You've taught me tons of really critical lessons. The recent one that the pearl you dropped is that we can help people get off fentanyl or stop injecting methamphetamines. But if we take them from drug use to recovery, but they stay in poverty, that we haven't actually solved the problem. Yeah. So homelessness, it's actually treating homelessness. It's more than just getting them recovery.
Yeah, for sure. Well, homelessness is a symptom of something else, right? So in order to address homelessness, you got to address how we got here, and not just how we got here, what happened when we were here, right? So a lot of people, there's two kinds of homelessness. There's situational and there's behavioral. And a lot of people will situationally become homeless, right? That's this issue we're having right now with the baby boomer crisis, right? Seniors are getting, and you're going to see this is going to blow up, right? Baby boomers are getting priced out of their benefits. So they're becoming situationally homeless. Then when you're homeless, the longer you're on the streets, the more likely you are to develop a mental illness, develop a substance abuse issue. And so, homelessness is just a symptom of something, but the longer you're there, the harder it gets to address. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I like your delineation of situational versus behavioral. However, I've treated over 2,500 unhoused in Las Vegas. And every single one of them explained to me that they were in the situational category.
Yep. Well, and so you know what's interesting is we identify this when we're working with the homeless, or working with anybody, right? That's had to develop stories to survive, right? So anybody that's in order to survive, they had to create stories or learn how to manipulate or learn how to work their way around the system. It's going to be difficult to work with because we have what we call the hologram. Right. So a lot of people, well, when you work with somebody that's been on the streets for a while, you're not really working with that person unless they're telling you the truth. And it takes a while for them to tell you the truth. So they'll tell you a story, and there might be a few holograms based on what service providers they work with. Right. So for this service provider, I got to say this to be able to get that. For this service provider, I got to be able to say this to get that. And so it takes a while to actually work with the individual and not the hologram.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So I got situational and I got behavioral. Most of them say they're situational, but most of them are truly behavioral.
Yeah. Well, maybe they started out situational, but it turned into behavioral. They did a study so that it takes about 130 days of living on the streets for someone to develop a mental illness. Could be less, but living on the streets.
Wow.
The reason for that is the constants in homelessness. There's 4 constants. You're subject to the elements. Your things are going to get stolen because that's how we shop. You're gonna be subject to violence because that's how we resolve conflict, and you're always on someone else's property. And then you take these things that put you in a condition of fight or flight, right? And you're always, cortisol. You're always pumping cortisol out because you're always guarded. You're not sleeping well. Your diet kind of sucks, and your hygiene is taking a dip. All these things together are the perfect ingredient for to develop a mental illness. And if you look at it, once somebody's developing a mental illness, or if you've been on the streets long enough, man, nothing in your life is consistent, right? Your housing isn't consistent, where you're staying isn't consistent, relationships aren't consistent. So what's consistent? Alcohol. Every time I drink, I get drunk. Every time I use, I get high. The one thing that shows up for me that I have control of, substance.
Right.
And so, and it's hard to say it, right? And you can only whisper it, but there are times where it makes sense, where substance use makes sense. So it can start out situational, but end up behavioral.
Wow, that's very well put. And I love how you structured that. I've always acknowledged that substance use disorders are both a cause of homelessness and an effect of homelessness.
Yep.
So many people become unhoused due to a substance use disorder. But even if they didn't have one, you're indicating that after 130 days, the likelihood of developing a substance use disorder, as well as other behavioral health problems, whether it's anxiety disorders, psychosis, those will be exacerbated over time.
For sure. If you didn't already have it, you might get it, right? So whatever, if you had anxiety problem before, we all do, right? Anxiety, you should be anxious sometimes. It's fine, right? And part of the gig too is like folks on the streets, like we become depressed, but like that's not necessarily. I would work with guys in recovery, and dudes are in recovery or on the streets, and they're like, man, I'm depressed, bro. I'm not doing too well, and I'm like, well, you should be, right? Life sucks right now, right? If you were happy, then we'd have a problem. The fact that you're depressed, the fact that you feel
that is an appropriate emotion for you to be experiencing
exactly
right
what
now.
We should be. Now we leverage this, right? Now you leverage this depression.
Maybe some willing to change.
Yeah,
some motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your TEDx that you did was probably my most favorite TEDx I've ever seen. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go check it out. Could you tell me real quick what's not so helpful help?
So, right. So, I could dig. You look at so there's a few things, right? So the definition of help is where you make things something easier for someone, right? You're making something easier for someone, you're helping them. But people always want to help the homeless, but the question is help them do what, right? And a lot of times when I was working out in the camps, I had an opportunity. There was a camp that it was the CDC. It was during COVID. Put out this thing where they had to shelter in place, so you couldn't move the camps. So we had a camp in Reno that had about 250 people, sometimes 300, sometimes less.
Big camp.
It was huge, dude. And I would watch while I was going out there and doing my outreach and cleaning up. I would watch all the groups of people come out and give and give and dump things and dump things. I'm saying dump because that's what it seemed like to me. And when people would come out, right, they would set up these banquet tables and they would put all the things on it. And the thing is, right, when you have to look at like what problem you're solving, what are you helping them to do easier, and what problem are you solving? So if you come out with a banquet table, right, and you put things on it, if your whole mission is to give things away, a measure of success is what?
How many sandwiches you give away?
Well, they take it, right? And people take stuff. So when you come out to a camp, they put things on the table, put all the things on it. Now you have to keep in mind too that when you're homeless, you don't have an income. Everything is currency. So people aren't taking stuff because they need it. They taking stuff because they could barter it later. And so you're actually contributing to the street economy. Let's say you don't care about that, but what we're saying is like what I'm saying. Not that you don't care. Who knows what people care about? But if you really want to help, who knows? But if you really want to help, you have to ask yourself, what am I helping people do? And there's like, you break it down. There's a spectrum of help, right? There's an impact of help. There's 3 ways you can help, right? So we'll go on the spectrum of help. Like right in the middle of help is a kind gesture. For example, if somebody's hungry, a kind gesture would be giving them a granola bar. But in 2 hours, they might be hungry again, right? And so you didn't solve the problem. The far end of the spectrum is actually solving the problem to where they'll never ask for food again, right? And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, a lot of programming, all the things. But this is what we want to do, right?
Right.
But on the other end of the spectrum, so middle, you have kind gesture, solving the problem. And on the other end of the spectrum is what we call pathological altruism, to where you help somebody so much.
Pathological altruism.
To where you help someone so much, you actually cause a problem.
Disease being good.
Yeah.
Pathological altruism.
Yeah.
All right. I'll remember that one.
Where you're helping so much, you're hurting somebody. And then you look at the impact of help, right? It's micro, meso, macro. Micro way to help somebody is the individual. Meso is you help the group. Macro is you help society, right? And so what we do often when we help the homeless is we help on a micro level. You help that person. But often when you help a person, you could do damage to the group. What does that look like? Well, you look at, so if I was working with this guy in a park, I asked him, I was like, he's, camping in the park. I asked him, I'm like, hey man, what can I do to help you improve your situation? He was like, give me $20. Fair enough. It's a logical answer. I would have helped him. But if he would have used that money to buy dope, then I would have helped him while at the same time doing damage to the group. Right. And it didn't help the group and it didn't help the society altogether. So when you look to help people, you have to ask yourself, what kind of impact will this help? And it is very real that you can help an individual and do damage to the group and society.
Right.
So is my way of helping this person going to not only help him, but the group? And a lot of times when you're helping all 3, it doesn't feel like it to the person.
Right.
It doesn't feel like help right now. But later you'll thank me.
Yes. Yeah, that's a lot of what we're trying to do at Vegas Stronger, where we're trying to help both the individuals, get well, get off the streets by addressing a fentanyl dependency. And it also helps their meso as well as the macro, because they end up becoming self-supporting and being able to be contributing members of society.
Yeah, well, and that's it, right? The idea it's not just about the guy, right? When I got better, my kids got a dad. Their dad came back, bro. When I got better, my mom got her son, right? And my granny lived long enough to see me become a man. I mean, a man, brother. Like if you look at it, like I wasn't an adult until I got into recovery. I was doing all these childish things, right? Define adult without using age, right? There's some things you got to do to actually be an adult, but like you don't just help the individual. You're helping the whole community when you get somebody into places like Reno Stronger or Vegas Stronger.
Amen.
And Reno.
You talked about your personal recovery journey a little bit. Could you give us, when did you get clean?
December 28th, 2014.
Wow. 10 years ago.
Yep. A
little more than 10.
And I remember it like yesterday. I remember the last day I used. I remember.
How long did you use up until then?
Like when do you count when your life went to shit, right? So there was the build up and there was the managing it and all the feelings. I've done drugs my whole life, right?
Okay, so you used drugs for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, these ever since ever since I was 14 years old.
14. It's an often age that it starts.
Yeah.
Okay. And at some point between 14 and in your mid 30s,
Yeah.
I believe you crossed an invisible line.
Yes.
Where you entered into a substance use disorder or you developed addiction.
I remember that day.
Oh my goodness.
I remember the day. I broke my hand, and when I broke my hand, I was getting these oxys. It was back in the day when we were doctor shopping, right?
Okay.
Doing a lot of doctor shopping. They were still
prescribing oxys.
Yeah, and I was selling them before I developed.
Okay.
And when I broke my hand, I started taking them, and I started taking them more. And then I ended up, I would sell them to people and then up buying them back. not the best businessman, but I would sell them for $3 and buy them back for $5. This whole gig. And but then I remember at one point I left my house that morning. I was driving to work. I hadn't lost my job. I hadn't lost my wife or kid yet, but I left my house and I was living about 45 minutes from where I had to work. And I was about 2 minutes. I was the right turn away from my job. And I realized that I left my midday Roxy at home.
Okay.
I turned around and
terror. Yeah, absolutely not possible.
Panic, bro. Panic. Dude, I totally panicked. And I remember when I was driving there, I'm speeding, I'm driving past people. I remember when I was doing that, I was like, this is it. I'm an addict.
You knew it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You had caught yourself.
I knew it. Yeah. And I was okay with it, though.
Right. No, I get it. You had acceptance.
Yep.
That's so funny because I remember the time for me as well.
Yeah,
and I used from a teenager, about 14. I went in the woods and smoked some weed with some friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I drank and used progressively more and more until I was 41 years old. Now, when I first got clean, I decided that I really wasn't bad until my late 30s.
Yeah.
But the longer that I've been clean and sober, the earlier I realized the line occurred.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I was regularly blacking out in high school was kind of a bad indication.
The longer you're in, the more you're like, wait a minute. When I was 3 years old and I over candied that, and it gets like when you're a parent, like I remember my son like woke up and he just wanted to have a donut. And I was like, we got a problem here, kid.
We see the symptomology. I had the same thing. My kid came home from a birthday party at about 8 years old. And I looked at him like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. And he looked at me, big eyes, and said, I had 4 Cokes. And I was like, oh, here we go.
Oh, God. Yeah.
All right. So I had cut you off. You remember, you were telling me the moment that you got clean.
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the last time I knew I was going to turn myself in. You
had a PO or something.
Yeah, I was on the run. And,
okay.
And usually when you get high, like our brains aren't broken, right? Our brains are just fine. We're just really efficient problem solvers, right? And
my primary problem was, how do I get high?
Yes. So I solved it efficiently every day. No fail. I was on it. I was the best. And so and that was it. And I knew like I'm going to turn myself in. And that's it, right? If you talk to any guy that's a convict or on the streets and they got warrants and they're going to turn themselves in, they're banging out, bro. And I remember that was the one time that I didn't get high. It didn't matter how much dope I used it, like, because I knew that was it.
Oh, see, this sense of defeatedness that had overcome because you knew you were turning yourself in. It didn't allow the substances to work to get you euphoria.
No, dude. And I was ready to die anyways. Like when you're drug dealer or a drug addict on the streets, like you do a risk assessment, right? Every day is a risk, right? And you do a risk assessment. This could kill me. Right. And you accept that because I'm doing this to numb out pain. And if I'm dead, no more pain. Yeah. So, or, that's part of the gig and they're going to either die or you're going to end up in prison. And prison's a retirement plan, right? If you're actively committing crimes to support this. And so it's just part of the gig. And I remember one time I went to detox, and in detox, they had you do this exercise where they had you write. It was two-part exercise. The first part is you write an obituary. If you were to die right now, what would your obituary look like? And then you think, if everything goes right, I stay clean, everything goes right, what would your obituary look like if you die of a ripe old age and successful? I couldn't get to the second one. The first one was so depressing. I knew that the people would show up who were my family or people that I took advantage of, I stole from. I wasn't the best son. I always tried to punish my mom, and my brothers. I would steal. I mean, wasn't a good dude. And if people showed up to my funeral, it would be of obligation, right? And I could see my kids there. Like, what would I do to my kid? It was just terrible, man. So I left AMA.
Oh, so you didn't want to stay and go through that exercise?
No, dude, I couldn't even visualize being 5 years from now. I don't want to go 5 years like this anymore. I couldn't even visualize it. And so
we call that pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization.
That's exactly what it was. And I remember, like, I had this fantasy from then. I was on the streets a couple more years, and from then I would fantasize about, like, because I'm gonna die on the streets. I knew that, I accepted that, but I would fantasize that maybe I would see an old lady getting robbed somewhere, and I could run up,
save the day,
save her, and die,
be the hero,
doing something admirable. Or a puppy wanders into the street, and I save this puppy, and I get hit by a truck, and they're like, "That Grant, he was a drug addict, but he really did save that puppy one day." So I would like fantasize about dying, but dying doing something admirable, because that's the only good thing someone will remember from it. And then when I used that last day, my mindset was like, you're gonna die no matter what, dude. At least die giving it a shot. Use the same energy to screw yourself off as you would to climb out, right? You're gonna suffer anyways. You can suffer down here or suffer on your way up to something. And there was an acceptance. Got high, but didn't get high. And then that was part of the process. Yeah.
And then you said you turned yourself in. Did you do a period of incarceration?
Yeah, well, not to prison. I was facing prison 5 to 7, and then I caught another charge when I was in there, which is great. When I first got it, I thought it was a letter. Nobody's writing me. They call my name. I'm like, oh, somebody cares about me, and I go up, and it's a freaking charge for some shit that I stole. Anyways, and what's funny is, like, when you on the street and you do this much crime, they're only catching you for this much.
Right.
So you're willing to exchange. What do you want to give me a couple years? Whatever. And then I went back to court for sentencing. When I went back to court for sentencing, they offered me drug court and to go to drug court, to go to rehab up on the mountain, Harris Springs, and I took it, man.
Oh, amazing!
Oh, dude, and I was there.
You do 4 months up there?
3 months.
3 months.
3 months
up at Harris Springs Ranch, the West there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
That place saved my life,
and
for sure.
You changed during that stay.
Not just that stay, but the wait in jail. Like, the wait in jail was about 8 months, and I had a paradigm shift in there where I started reading, and of course I'm exercising. I thought I was dumb, so if I'm going to be dumb, I'm going to be the best looking dumb dude.
Yeah, strong. Be strong.
If I'm going to be dumb, I'm going to be strong. Strong.
Yeah.
And and that was it, man. I had a little paradigm shift in there. Went to rehab. When I came out, I was just as aggressive as I was. And they'll tell you, you'll hear this at meetings, right, and stuff, that be as aggressive as I was at screwing my life up and getting high. That's how aggressive I was on staying clean. I was a little monster.
And you still are today.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's amazing seeing you strive to help improve yourself on a micro, a meso, and a macro basis. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned stronger, and it made me think of boxing.
Mm-hmm.
And both of us have somehow intertwined boxing into recovery.
Oh, yeah, I think that's
what is that?
Here's what it is. Because in Reno we started a program. I started a program called GRIT: Grow, Refine, Integrate, Thrive. And the whole gig, I believe with boxing is that the number one, of course it's fitness, right? It's mental hygiene, right? You're coming in, you're getting fit, and your body's a byproduct. Your body's just going to happen no matter what. But what gets you in there is the mental hygiene. And what it was for me, and what I preach to the guys that come into our program, is it teaches us how to chill the f*** out, how to stay calm, right? We're always panicking. We're always like this, like this. And there's two things you can't do at once. You can't protect yourself and grow at the same time. Because when you grow, your underbelly is exposed, right? And so when you're guarded, you don't learn anything when you're guarded, right? So at some point you have to relax, right, and chill. And that's from boxing. I've learned to just chill out, and how do you breathe through a panic, and how do you slow your heart down? It's not just about being in a ring. It's about out there. Like, how do you breathe through a panic? Terrible shit's going to happen. That's it. Right. It's how do you respond to life properly? And I think boxing trains folks more than just punching, more than just moving, more than just the exercise. It teaches you how to chill out and stay calm in a panic. Yeah.
That's very Zen. And you know, I agree. You know, to me, I put on boxing gloves after I got clean. And now, you know, I've had 7 amateur fights. I love the sport. I still train every week despite being 60 years old. And to me, another benefit besides that chilling out is I found that during a good boxing workout, I get a better rush than I got from any drug I ever did.
For sure. And it lasts longer.
And it's natural. It feels good. I mean, especially when I notice myself being able to do something that I wasn't able to do 6 months before.
Oh, dude, that's it. That's it. And the high is when you land it without trying.
Right.
Whatever that was. Yeah.
Oh, right. He just threw it, and I just naturally threw this combination. Didn't even think, and I just engaged.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful feeling.
Oh, it's great, dude. Yeah.
Well, this is the Human Up podcast. Grant, could you tell us what Human Up means to you?
I look, dude. I'm going to share a story, and it comes down to help, right? And I think that like I think what goes wrong in the bigger picture in the world is that we get so focused on us, right? You get so focused on you, whatever you're doing, you know. And you know, well, and it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. You're focused on your shit and whatever's going on with you and growing. And unless we make helping other people part of a pillar of our existence, a pillar, you know, like you have to understand your role in the community, right? I think often we help and this is where it comes to Human Up, right? You should do things not to reserve your condo in heaven. You should do things not just to balance out your karma. You know, you should do things because you have to. That's your role, and understanding the bigger picture and the impact that you have on the micro, meso, and macro in the world. So I think when you talk about Human Up, it's about all of us, you know, and that like, for example, I mean, my story with you is you didn't even know me. Somebody told me about you. They asked me if I had a male mentor, a male role model, and I was like, absolutely not. There's not a single male that I know. Screw all of these guys. There's not a single male that I know that I would like look up to. And they showed me Dave on Facebook, and I was working in recovery. So I kind of, okay, I know who this guy is. And I followed him. And what Dave didn't know is like, you just being like who you were and staying clean and being, you know, driven, you were athletic, you were running shit, you were a boss. I want to be a boss one day. I would watch what you wear. I like went to Goodwill and bought a jacket, and I still have it that looked like a jacket you wore somewhere. But what I'm saying,
pinstriped, I remember.
Pinstriped, bro. Pinstripe. And but the point that I'm making is like, you weren't trying to help me, but by being a good human, you bled, right? Like you influenced me, right? And so Human Up is just being good, not just for yourself, but being a good person and growing and evolving and elevating because people are watching. Do you know?
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love the fact that you're now running Reno Stronger.
Yeah.
I'm down here running Vegas Stronger. Yeah. I love the fact that we've both punched each other in the face multiple times. You're actually the only guy who's ever knocked me out, which is, you know, to me, something beautiful that we share. We've both punched each other pretty hard.
Don't try this at home. Right. Like I was listening to Dave.
No, but you know, what we actively do in our life is try to help elevate our community by reaching out our hand, by modeling good behavior, by helping people address their substance use, their mental health issues, their homelessness to rise up, and hopefully we all human up and become better.
Yep.
It was a total honor having Grant Denton on the Human Up podcast. Thank you, Grant.
My brother.